Ladies and gentlemen, to everyone in attendance, please be aware that our meetings are recorded and made available for public viewing on the Townsville City Council website. We have a number of visitors in our gallery. I ask that you respect the area here, and there is to be no cheering or interruptions. Could I ask everyone, please, if you have a mobile phone, if you could place it, turn it off or turn it on silent. I'd like to now acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Walgaruga Bar of Gurrumbil Borough and Yumbabeng, and to the south of Galbadira, the Bindal people, and pay respects to their culture, their ancestors and their elders past, present and all future generations. Could I now ask Reverend Horst Stoy of the Lutheran Church to please lead us off in prayer.
It gives me great pleasure to be here today because councils of any persuasion are there to serve, and to call to serve is one of the great privileges that we have. So let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you that you have placed us in areas of responsibility where we can share and care for one another and for the well-being of the community. We pray for the people of Townsville and its environment. We pray for the people who have responsibility for us and with us. We pray for our councillors and council, that you might guide them, help them, support them, encourage them in their valued service to the community. We ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. Can I have someone, we have an apology for today's meeting. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Walker, is away. Can I have someone move, we accept his apology, move Councillor Morapino, seconded Councillor Sawes. All those in favour, carried unanimously. I'd like to now ask, do any councillors wish to apply for leave of absence? If not, then I'll continue through the agenda. Confirmation of the minutes from the previous meeting from the 26th of February 2019. Can I have someone move the previous minutes? Thank you, Councillor Coombs, seconded Councillor Greenie. Are there any amendments? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillors, can I please check again? All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to disclosures of interest. We have disclosures of interest for the standing committees, but could I ask for the purposes of full council, number 2, 3, 4 and 7 be now applied to full council. And that, as we have done, so for the purposes of this meeting, they are all perceived conflicts of interest, and that would be in item 5, 6, 7, 9 and 21 of this agenda. Sorry, item 5, 6, sorry. So it relates to, the first one's to item 5, the second one to item 6, the third one to item 7, my apologies, and then 21. For the reasons set down as part of the standing committees. So for item 5, there is a perceived conflict of interest. And I will ask Councillor Jacob, do you wish to be included in those perceived conflicts of interest?
Yes, I do, Lady.
Right. So the additional names would be Councillor Jacob, Councillor Ryder, Councillor Doyle, Councillor Greenie, and myself. And Councillor Cook. Have I missed any council? Can I please ask for people to be quiet as they're entering the chamber? Yes, thank you. Could you please
Sorry,
speak up?
number 6, which is my personal one. Wanting to read that please.
6, I would say you, no, does he want to? Yes, you do, according to the CEO. So let me please complete these ones. So item 6 would include all the councillors and myself. Item 7 and item 21. Thank you. All right, they are the perceived conflicts of interest. Now, councillors, are there any other perceived conflicts of interest? Councillor Malkina?
Item 10 of the Planning and Development Committee, in regards to pace developments, I was given 2 tickets to the VA Supercars back in 2017. So for that reason, I'm stepping out and moving for item 10.
Right, thank you. All right, are there any other? Yes, Councillor.
Yes, Madam Mayor, small can I have disclosure interest number 1 applied to this full council meeting for agenda item 1 in that I am a patron of Scouts. So I'll handle it by vacating the room during that.
Thank you. Are there any others? Yes, Councillor Ryder.
Madam Mayor, I've got item 8, page 9. I've got an MPI as one of the companies that are tendering Arad to Oasis. It's a sponsor of one of the events I manage, and I'll be leaving the room when this tender.
Could you please, have you provided the staff with a written?
Oh, I've got that here.
Right, if you could provide that to Tanya, please, that would. So that is an MPI. Are there any other disclosures of interest for council? All right, if not, we'll continue with the agenda. Correspondence?
No,
Thank you. Petitions. I have a petition from Townsville against live export, calling on the abandonment of live export through the port. So I will provide that to you. It is a change.org petition, and while it does not meet our standing orders requirement, I'll still ask you to provide a response. Thank you. All right. Are there any other petitions? If none, I'll ask deputations. We have ACOS. They're not. They're here. Thank you. I believe PAS was delayed.
Yeah, he's about to be
Would you like to? Can you present for ACOS? All right. Alison? Cherise, sorry, Cherise. Would you please step forward?
Hello everyone. I prepared a speech because I was banking on my associate Pat, who is organising the Raise the Rate campaign for New Start and Youth Allowance through ACOS, which is the Australian Council of Australian Council of Social Services, but he's not here yet because his plane was delayed and went to Cairns because of mechanical problems. And he's just about to touch down right now and should get here on time, within 10 minutes to be precise. So he's actually given me some notes on what New Start is and why it should be raised, and I could go through that or I could wait till he comes along.
We are on a timetable today, and I'm afraid.
Alright, well, when he gets here we can talk to you about that. So I'll just read out what I've written. Okay?
Thank you.
I'm only checking because I'm feeling online. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to discuss the matter of why we need to raise the New Start payment. There are a multitude of reasons, actually, and hopefully giving you some of my personal experiences can help shed some light on this issue. I was contacted by Pass a few weeks ago as he had somehow noticed that I had actively but quietly been advocating for the rights of the unemployed and other people such as youths on youth allowance and students on OS study by reposting information to various sites on the internet. I am an extremely private person who has in recent years been very socially isolated due in part to becoming unemployed. So the only real social life I have had lately has been limited online via Facebook and Twitter and so on. Regardless of this, I have definitely been keeping abreast of current issues and doing what little I can with limited resources to help enlighten the community and spread important information which, in my opinion, may be useful for the greater good and lead to better and fairer conditions for the vulnerable in society. I've actually worked since 1986 until late 2013 for one employer, Queensland Health. I've been a registered nurse since 1990. Unfortunately, in April 2013, I woke up one morning in terrible pain and found I now have a chronic pain condition from a permanent degenerative spinal problem, which apparently I've had since I was born, but didn't affect me until then. I tried to keep working, but realised I was in more pain than some of my patients, and stupidly thought I would be given a disability payment, so I resigned from a long-term, well-paid and well-respected position. I would never have resigned if I had any idea of the next level of hell I was to endure on New Start. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. Being fully diagnosed, stabilised and treated by my doctor, seeing a pain specialist, attending pain clinics and still being told by my doctor that there's no sense applying for disability payment because, in his words, you have to be almost dead to get approved anymore, devolved into an endless fortnightly cycle of interrogation by multiple people at various job providers just to remain on New Start. Having to explain your life situation over and over again to uncaring strangers is very demoralising and invasive. I also suffer major depressive disorder and anxiety, and being hassled by these agencies to get a job, any job, even jobs which are unsuitable for me because of my disability, is just distressing and makes me angry. These agencies have done nothing for me in any way except stress me. In fact, if you are unemployed, you have to be working or studying. So I chose to go to university and study for my Bachelor of Nursing Science part-time just to get them off my back, so to speak. I finished this just before my back problems manifested. So afterwards, also to get them to leave me alone, I also studied an advanced diploma of naturopathy for 2 years, which unfortunately I didn't finish as I struggled with the course financially and had worsening symptoms of depression and anxiety. So back to the job provider roundabout I went. It's really hard applying for a set amount of jobs when there isn't many available, as statistically there's something like 8 applicants for any one job. It's difficult when you have barriers to employment such as health issues and poverty. It's difficult to study when you are demoralised and lacking resources such as textbooks and access to computers or transport. If you break things, you can't replace them. If you have care responsibilities, it's a problem. I'm a single parent. My children are 22 and 17. I've had 100% care of them ever since I was pregnant with my youngest child. My ex doesn't pay me regular child support and often cannot even be found. That's a whole other story. My 17-year-old has been sick for the last 2.5 years and sees a specialist haematologist at the hospital. Despite all of this, I continue to apply for any job I could possibly do, such as in retail and multiple RN jobs at the hospital, and I still get rejected. I've had one interview in 5 years. I did in fact get the job, but only worked for 2 months as I had to resign as I had an acute medical condition and had to go on and have surgery. I'm doing okay now. I learned a lot over the years and have been healing myself. Studying alternative medicine came in very handy. Also, I was told by Queensland Health that my professional referees are not satisfactory. despite the fact they are all professionals and that I need a reference from my most recent manager. That person left her position just after I resigned and refuses to acknowledge she ever knew me. If it all sounds complex, well, that's because it is. Raising the rate of the New Start would be helpful in so many ways to us. It's the little things that count. So let's look at what raising the rate would do with some examples of how I've struggled over the years. I realise that the situation is different for everybody and depends on their living arrangements, social networks, family and social support structures, whether they have children or other carer commitments, can access childcare, have disabilities or are disadvantaged in any other way. If this did not happen to me, I would still be employed in a reasonably well-off job which I was good at and where I was well respected. People don't realise that tomorrow it could be you in the same situation. Dealing with unemployment has given me a great understanding and empathy towards those who are doing it tough. Probably we should start off with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If the lower levels of basic physiological needs such as food, shelter and warmth are not met, there's no way you can even contemplate reaching self-actualisation at the top. Being on New Start affects us on the very basic level where the payment rate is so far below the actual poverty line, it's appalling and disappointing to see in such a wealthy country. I'm lucky enough to be in government housing and get rent assistance, which helps me out enormously. But I happen to know that the current situation of severe poverty in Australia is affecting many people, even our youth who are homeless, couch surfing or having to move back in with family and rely on the generosity and charity of others and organisations such as the Salvation Army. As for food, gas, electricity, basically everything related to the cost of living, even employed people are feeling the pinch. The cost of living has risen enormously over recent years. People have tightened their belts to the point where the economy is sluggish, as they aren't even spending anymore. Businesses are going broke. Unemployed people don't ask themselves, what would you like for dinner tonight? They go and buy what is on special and make do with that. They eat their children's leftovers and sometimes don't eat for days. This can lead to malnutrition and nutritional difficulties, and an extra burden on the health system. Nowadays, everyone needs the internet, so there's another cost. Raising children in these times is extremely expensive. Lacking money impacts on their self-esteem and anxiety levels also. Many children don't even ask their parents if they can attend outings, school camps, etc., as they know their parents can't afford it. This in turn leads to worsening depression in children and social isolation. Basically, parents go without to give their children all sorts of things, and the children see this and they feel it. People on New Start go without in other social ways. I used to have heaps of friends, but gradually over the years they stopped inviting me out, probably knowing that I have no money and can't afford to go to movies, shopping or coffee shops anyhow. They know I wear the same old clothes all the time and I don't know what a hairdresser looks like. I don't remember the last time I had a holiday. I thought I was doing okay at raising my children, but it's when your teenager comes home from school and has regrets such as, I have never been camping or bowling or been on a holiday, that it really gets to you. It's when your big brother is the CEO of an international company and takes his 4 daughters on holidays at least 3 times a year that they notice. It's when your grandparents are still working at 71 and 77, so they can help with school fees and uniforms. The children notice. Being on New Start or any government payment is all about choices. It's about making difficult choices and yet at the same time being limited in choices. It requires great resourcefulness and resilience. It's really helpful if you have social support of friends and family and a decent education as well, but not everyone has those things. Some people cope better than others, some people don't cope at all and become homeless or even suicide. I don't think asking for $75 a week is too much at all. In fact, it would be a great start to petition even greater changes to allow people a reasonable standard of living in such a rich country. To have people living so far below the poverty line in Australia is disgusting and, in my opinion, un-Australian. In fact, I have also been advocating for a universal basic income to be implemented in the wake of the techno-industrial revolution, where AI, computers and robotics will take over many of our existing jobs, leading to further massive unemployment. In summary, raising Newstart by $75 a week would at least allow people to have more choices, access better food, and perhaps save up some money for repairs to their vehicle, pay their car insurance and registration, have an outing or buy something nice for themselves. It would give them some dignity, so they didn't have to go asking friends, relatives, strangers and charities for handouts and help. It would ease some stress and anxiety and hopefully keep people from homelessness and desperation. Raising Newstart would be seen as the ethically and morally right thing to do in a modern civilised society.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have no notices of motion. There is no presentations. I'll now proceed with 2 mayoral minutes, councillors. My fellow councillors, you've heard a presentation today from someone who is on New Start. And at the Australian Local Government Association Assembly last year, the following motion was passed. In light of the burden placed on local governments across Australia to respond to the needs and challenges of people living in poverty and homelessness, the National General Assembly calls on the federal government to raise the New Start allowance to the level of the Henderson poverty line to increase the well-being and life chances of many in our community. Thousands of people in Townsville City live on inadequate social security payments that leave them struggling to afford the basics of life, like food, housing and clothing. These payments trap people in poverty, making it even harder for them to look for a job, keep a roof over their head and participate in our community. In the report published last year, Deloitte Access Economics found that a $75 per week increase in New Start would inject $35 million into the Townsville economy in its first year. Councillors, in light of what you heard today, a personal story, but also the large number of people in our community living on social security payments that are well below the poverty line, and to support the ALGA's advocacy campaign, I seek your endorsement for Townsville City Council to call on the Australian Government to raise the rate of New Start allowance, youth allowance and other allowances by at least $75 a week to improve the well-being and life chances in many of our community. May I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Are there any further comments from councillors? All right, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. I have one other mayoral minute, councillors, and many of you are aware of this one as well. The Local Government Association, with the support of the the Australian Local Government Association, with the support of the Local Government Association of Queensland, has launched its 2019 federal election advocacy campaign. The central focus of this campaign is the restoration of the value of the financial assistance grants to at least 1% of total Commonwealth taxation revenue. The Australian Local Government Association has endorsed the restoration of these financial assistance grants to at least 1% as its focus. To leverage the advocacy campaign, the LGAQ is seeking the formal backing of all Queensland councils. Local councils raise just 3% of all taxation revenue in Australia, but manage more than 33% of public assets. The federal government collects 80% of taxes and manages around 11% of public assets. While the provision of the federal assistance grants is welcome, the decline in local government share of taxation revenue from Canberra over the past 2 decades has moved from 1% in 1996 to 0.55% in 2018, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is unsustainable. The LGAQ is calling for Canberra to return this money to local communities faster and in a way that better meets the local needs and creates jobs. The success of the state government's Works for Queensland program, which offered untied funding to councils to deliver essential community projects and infrastructure while boosting local jobs, is promoted of an example of how restored financial assistance grants could work for all Queensland communities. Queensland currently receives a meagre $480 million a year in financial assistance grants, with only $2.4 billion being distributed nationally. Restorations of these grants to 1% would mean an additional $400 million for Queensland. Discussions on the restoration of financial assistance grants occurred at the LGAQ's Rock Assembly on the 7th of February with Senator Bridget McKenzie, the then Minister for Regional Services, Sports, Local Government and Decentralisation, and Stephen Jones MP, Shadow Minister for Regional Services, Territories and Local Government. The LGAQ President has also held meetings in Canberra on the 12th of February with the Deputy Prime Minister and advisors to the Prime Minister, Treasurer and Leader of the Opposition. Councillors, to formally back the LGAQ's advocacy campaign, I seek your endorsement for the following. Firstly, the Council expresses its appreciation to the Federal Government for the ongoing provision of the financial assistance grants for community projects. Second, that Council endorses restoration of the value of the financial assistance grants to 1% of the total Commonwealth taxation revenue. And finally, the Council considers how it best supports the LGAQ's advocacy through a community-driven campaign to federal representatives and candidates on the benefits of the restoration of financial assistance grants. Councillors, I support and move those 3 points. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Coon. Any discussions on that? Yes, Councillor Jacob.
Yes, Lady Mayor, look, I really support that issue, but as I pointed out in some training the other day, it would be good if the local government and councils were recognised in the Constitution, because that would give extra impetus into the 1%. Because we're not currently recognised in that Constitution, it's not going to make us any harder getting the money out of the federal government. But if we were recognised, then we could put into place getting that 1% all the time. So is it possible that the people can go to their representatives and see whether that can come up as a referendum?
Councillor, at the moment, there is no move to go back to the people with a referendum for local government. There is no requirement for the federal government to then pay us 1%, even if we were recognised under the Constitution. So the origin of the federal assistance grants dates back to Gough Whitlam days, and for many years was maintained at about 1% of taxation revenue until 1996, and we've seen a steady decline since then. So you're well aware that the pressures of financial sustainability are quite prominent for local governments. This would go a long way, not just helping this local council, but think about those out at Hughenden, Julia Creek, Cloncurry, where they're seeing declining revenues because of declining populations. This would go a long way to ensuring financial sustainability for many of those local authorities. Any other? So I've moved and I have a seconder. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, CEO. We will now move to, and because of the crowd in the gallery, there are 2 items I think that we need to deal with first before we move through to the committee reports. And I will ask the staff if we could deal with the first one, which will be the Motorsport and Driver Education Facility, page 107 in your agenda. Now, can I have a briefing on this, please, from the either Ebba, please, as the Director of Planning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 26 of the Council agenda refers to a material change of use application that Council has received to establish a motorsport and driver education facility at 132 Bidwillie Road. The land is council-owned land and is currently zoned for rural purposes. The application itself comprises of several items. The first being a circuit racing track, drag racing, a burnout pad, off-road rally racing, remote controlled car racing, go-kart racing. It's envisaged that each of these facilities will have their own specific track. Envisaged as part of this overall facility is a driver training facility as well. And as part of the applications, it's proposed to have a number of larger events associated with the driver facility. The application was publicly notified, and during that period we received 30 submissions, 24 in support of the application and 6 objecting to the proposal. The issues raised during the proposal were varied. They included rural amenity, hours of operation, noise, habitat for the black-throated finch, safety issues, property valuations in the area in terms of the impact of the use on property valuations, traffic issues, roads and the condition of those roads, fencing and implication might have for adjoining properties, agricultural land and the location itself, the suitability of the location itself. The application referred to SARA for comment. They did come back with several issues, mainly in relation to access of the site, in particular the intersection treatment with Flinders Highway, and in particular the proximity of the rail crossing and what implications that might have. Through discussions with DTMR and through the proponent, it's proposed that the facility be accessed off a dirt track leading out to Woodstock Township, close to the intersection of Woodstock-Larue Road with Flinders Highway. As part of the further discussions with SARA and through DTMR, it's proposed to stage development, and that's reliant on the scale of people attending and using the site. So stage 3 comprises of a maximum of 75 vehicles per hour using the site. Stage 2 envisages some of the order of 250 vehicles per hour. As part of stage 2, they're required to provide a rail crossing, upgrade rail crossing, and stage 3 is a preliminary approval which will see a new intersection being developed and the full use of the proposed development. Officers have considered all the issues identified by SARA, by the objectors and by the supporters of development. They're recommending approval subject to conditions, and it's open for Council's consideration.
Thank you. All right. Are there any questions regarding this application to start? It's quite a detailed report. Each of the submitters have had their submissions dealt with individually. Alright, so can I have someone move the report? Thank you, Councillor Molokino. Seconded Councillor Sawes. Are there any further comments?
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Just wanted to speak in favour of this. I come from a long line of redheads on my mother's side of the family. My family have been long involved in Speedway through Hens Peters, and it's fantastic to see this facility moving a step closer to actuality. It's been great for the development over the years, the old Speedway, for the sport locally in Townsville. So I just wanted to speak in favour of it, and having 2 children go through learner driving at the moment, I think that facility is long overdue here as well. So very, very supportive of this idea.
Yes, I think there's many in the community who'll be very supportive of this. All right, any other comments? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. The next item we will deal with is item 25, which is the cattle holding yards. Another contentious issue. I'll wait to... Alright, councillors, we'll now deal with item 25, the material change of use for undefined use cattle holding yards. Alright, so I'll ask again Eva, if you can please give us the background on this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a reminder, this application was considered at the Planning Bond Committee back at 12th of February, where the decision was to refer it to Council for a full determination. The material change of use application is for a cattle holding yard. It's located at 711 Heath Road and 812 and 840 Flinders Highway. It's approximately 70 kilometres out of town, adjacent to the existing medium impact industry area, just off the highway there. The land is currently zoned rural. The proposed development consists of various items. They include 18 cattle holding yards or pens, a site office, cattle handling facilities, a feed storage shed, a storage basin, and an effluent pond. And I believe attachment 1 of the council report identifies the site plan for it that actually outlines how it sits on site. The application that was received by council, they applied for 15,000 head of cattle at any one time. However, within the planning report itself, or their planning report, it identified that at any one time that they envisaged that there'd be 2,000 to 5,000 head of cattle. The estimated annual throughput of the facility was envisaged to be somewhere worth about 100,000 head of cattle per year. During the public notification period, we received 64 submissions, 1 for and 63 against. The issues raised during the public submission period, they were varied and it was quite a few items. They included water quality, water quantity, odour, noise, dust, had concerns with the impact of the effluent or the operation of the effluent holding pond, health impacts, environmental impacts, traffic impacts and economic impacts. Through the process, council officers engaged a consultant to do a peer review of the technical reports. The recommendations that came out of the peer review recommended that there's still some data gaps and some concerns and that further investigation and further studies needed to be undertaken. And recommended that if council were to approve the development, then that it should be subject to various conditions to mitigate the impacts of the proposed development. Officers have taken into consideration the recommendations from the peer review. They've considered the issues raised during the public notification period outlined in the report, and they are recommending approval for the cattle holding facility. However, not for the 15,000 head of cattle identified in the application, but limited to a maximum of 4,500 head of cattle only, and still subject to a variety of conditions which relate to a lot of management plans to address the issues raised by the peer review. The report is tabled for your consideration.
Thank you. Councillors, a number of you have gone through this report as I have, and I've raised some concerns with the staff. We have a report here that seeks to request to approve the officer's recommendation. However, I won't be supporting the officer's recommendation. I'm looking to refuse this application. So I'll ask the councillors, Does anyone wish to move the officer's recommendation? All right. So no one wishes to support this report? All right. Then I would assume that council's decision is to refuse this application. Do I have support for that? No. So reasons for refusal would be, and we had an interesting presentations at committee, and I thank both sides for their presentations. However, the proposed development should be refused as it conflicts with the strategic framework, rural zone code and overlay codes for the Townsville City Plan. The subject site cannot accommodate a development of the scale proposed, as the land area is not large enough to mitigate the adverse impacts on the environment and the adjoining community. This use should be located on larger rural lands where the impacts can be better managed and larger buffer areas can be maintained. The technical report submitted by the applicant in relation to water quality, water supply, stormwater quality, odour, noise and dust do not adequately address the impacts on the environment and the amenity impacts on the surrounding community. In particular, there will be significant impacts on the surrounding community in relation to noise, dust and odour as a consequence of this development. And it is for these reasons I will refuse this development. All right, now that's what I will be tabling to the minute clerk. Are there any others who wish to table reasons for refusal? Yes, Councillor Coon.
I oppose any approval of this application because, to concur with yourself, I do not believe that it's an appropriate location due to its proximity to residents, making it extremely unlikely that dust, odour and noise nuisances can be managed effectively. Further, I'm concerned that approval of this small-scale cattle holding yard will be an impediment to the development of a much larger facility in some more suitable location.
Thank you.
I will supply that to you.
Right, anyone else? We'll go Councillor Molokino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also believe the strategic framework has been adhered to on here, no less than 400 hectares, and we're getting less than 1/10 from that is animal husbandry. Unfortunately, in my personal opinion, there's not sufficient mitigation to stop the odour from affecting the residents. As I said, as I've been doing some research, predominant wind is east northeasterly and the residents are in the southwesterly direction, so any of that wind 75% of the time in the last 15 years is going to be impacting on those residents. So I don't believe they need to wake up in the morning and smell that, that's all. The noise is another issue that I've had, Madam Chair. They did talk about minimising, in the report, minimising nighttime works, but then it goes on to say that when the ships are in, they're going to be doing 24-hour operations, so it sort of doesn't fit on that side. And obviously I've got issues around the water usage as well, if there's sinks and waters in the area, and we've got residents that rely on that cool water for their drinking water and use around the house, and what impact will that on the water table? There's a lot of questions. So for that reason I will be supporting the application.
Right, thank you, Councillor. Are there any others? Councillor Jacob and then Councillor Dawes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through the Chair. Of the 64 submissions from the public, 63 were against the cattle holding yards at Oak Valley. The residents' main concern against the material change of use were over water quality, quantity, odour, effluent, holding ponds, noise, dust, health impacts, traffic impacts, economic impacts. All of these concerns are still relevant even though the original proposal has been scaled back by the council officers to 4,500 head of cattle instead of 15,000 that was originally proposed. One of the submitters identified that their family had grown up on cattle stations, and they state that even a muster of 300, 400 cattle in yards before transport identified that you can smell the cattle hundreds of metres away, not to mention the noise, and he states that cattle are extra vocal after transport and the stress that they have endured on the journey. He also says with strong breezes, imagine the odours that will be blowing through the valley. I believe the health issue is very relevant also to the material change of use of the residents. Q fever has been identified by many of the submitters, and I believe not enough thought has been given to possible outcomes within the report. I also believe that this material change of use for a rural residential area, only 17 kilometres from the CBD. I will always support the residents of this city when they have genuine concerns, and show that concern when it is well presented in submissions that are documented grounds of facts and circumstances.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Councillor Doyle?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I cannot support this application or the office's recommendation, as I believe the proposed development conflicts with the strategic framework, which has already been detailed. The rural zone code and overlays of the Townsville City Council city plan. The size and subject of the site is of concern, and again, as with other councillors that have already raised the issues of dust, noise and odour, I have not seen anything that to me gives me doesn't rest well with me in terms of raising more questions and answers in relation to those environmental impacts. And I believe it's detrimental to the community of interest.
Thank you, councillors.
I concur, Madam Mayor, with most of the other councillors' statements.
Thank you, Councillor Greenie. Councillor Cook?
Madam Mayor, I'm also voting against this agenda item, as I feel that this proposal may well be suited to another site due to its close proximity to both residential homes and businesses based on the following concerns. We've all addressed the strategic framework, but I'd like to just reiterate again. The subject site cannot accommodate a development of the scale proposed, as the land area is not large enough to mitigate the adverse impacts on the environment and join the community. As previously stated, I feel the proposal should be located on a larger rural land where the impacts can be better managed and larger buffer areas can be implemented. With regard to odour and noise and dust, the reports submitted by the applicant relating directly to odour, noise and dust do not adequately address the impacts on the environment and the amenity impacts on the surrounding community, both residential and business. I do not believe that the noise, dust or odours will stop at the boundaries as predicted, and invariably climate and wind direction, as Councillor Molteno previously stated, will be critical factors to the residents and business amenity.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Rayburn?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So regarding item 25, I wish to vote not to support the officer's recommendation for the following reason. With respect to the rural zone code, I believe the reports are inconclusive in their ability to demonstrate no impacts on adjoining properties, particularly with respect to odour concerns raised by the community. To support this point, with respect to the concern of odour, the report states odours will still emanate from the effluent pond. And further, again, the control of the odour relies upon the effluent pond having a lid formed by drying crust manure. Now, it also says no consideration has been given to wet weather events which would prevent a crust from forming, which would thus pose an odour problem. Given the recent event in our city, of course, I have concerns about how this issue was managed, and they have not been addressed in the supply report.
Thank you. All right, councillors, any others before I move that we refuse this application based on the statement of reasons provided?
Let me say, please, if I'm going through the chair,
Yes.
that I am supportive of the cattle industry. No doubt about it. All I'm saying in my on this subject is that I think they're a better location further away from built-up areas where this sort of business can run successfully.
I think, Councillor, we'd all agree with you on that. There is no doubt that there are operations already in the city that are doing this work, and we're not receiving necessarily complaints about odour or smell or water because they're on appropriate size sites. All right, councillors, so I will move that we refuse this application. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Molteno. I'll put it based around the statement of reasons. We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion to refuse is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We will move back to just checking something. Councillors, can I seek your permission for a 5-minute adjournment so we allow the gallery to clear, and then we will come back for business. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greenie. All those in favour? We will have a 5-minute adjournment. Now I will move Now, item 14 is noted by us, the committee, so we'll move a separate delegation for that. And item 12 we will move separately as well. So therefore I will now move item 9, replaced by 25, but 9, 11 and 13 and 15. You'll have to move those. So I'll ask Councillor Green, because I was not in attendance for the whole time, to move items 9, 11, 13 and 25. But do we not have to note that on the agenda to move item 9?
There would be change of recommendation.
Alright, correct. Alright, so we don't move item 9, we leave that. Alright, so we will move item 11, 13 and 15. Councillor Green?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I would like to move items 11, 13 and 15 from the Planning and Development Committee from Tuesday, March 12, 2019.
Alright, thank you, Councillor Green. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ryder. Any discussion on those items? If not, I will put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. We'll now look at item 12, which is the Townsville Transport Advisory Committee. So, councillors, I did make all of you aware that the state government representative, Scott Stewart, has set up a public transport working group, and he has asked me to represent council on that. I've attended the first meeting with Councillor Molokino, and I believe that rather than set up another group, it may be appropriate if we just note this report and wait to see what the outcomes are from his group.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, can you, what intensity or frequency do those meetings take place?
Monthly, I believe. So ours would be only quarterly. So monthly we're likely to see a response to some of the concerns that the community has raised with us. Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Do we have a chance of reference for that committee?
That will be coming back to us. I think they were developing those as part of the meeting.
Maybe all thank Stewardship's office in regards to that, and they catch up with it.
What I'd like to do is, if we, in terms of reference, table them at one of the meetings. Alright. Councillor Jacob.
Yes, through the Chair. I would like to ask how those appointments were made to that transport.
I beg your pardon, Councillor, could you speak up?
Yes, look, I would like to know how those appointments, I can understand yourself being on that, on the safety, but I've got the terms of reference and everything of this item number 12 that we're discussing now, and it says there's 2 council representatives. I know we're not going to do that now, but I just want to pose the question, how was the councillor appointed?
Well, I was invited on there by the member for Townsville as the mayor, and anyone I wish to represent me, or my representative. So the invitation was sent to me as the mayor. Okay. Thank you, councillors. So I'd like to change the recommendation for 12 that we note the report, leave it as what we said at the committee. Alright, so I will move that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Green. We'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Now, item 14, we've all heard the Belcara statement. So with that, there is a grey area on whether or not we can even vote on this. I was sought advice, and thank you, CEO. So until those matters are cleared up, and we will have the Office of Independent Assessor here in 2 weeks, till we can actually clear the matter, I would suggest that we note this report and delegate to the CEO the correct terminology is to deal with the matters raised in the report.
In the report, yeah. And report back to the council.
All right, can I have someone move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Doyle, seconded Councillor Sauls. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I'll now ask Councillor Greening to move her reports, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I would like to present the Community Health and Environment Committee's report from Wednesday the 13th of March 2019. Item number 16 contained on page 54 of the ordinary council agenda. Thank you.
All right, do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Do you wish to comment on the report?
I would like to thank Fred Bruce and Mark Robinson and his team for the amount of work that's gone into this report. Madam Mayor, it presents opportunities to reduce council's annual operating costs whilst delivering significant electricity savings and maximising our return on investment. And I urge all councillors, not on the committee, to fully read the report. It is very in-depth and very informative, and I look forward to continuing that work. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. All right. We have a mover and seconder. Yes, Councillor Jacob.
No, sorry, no mover and second.
I have a mover and seconder.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor
Yes,
Green and Councillor Rayburn.
Okay.
All right. I'll now call upon councillors to vote to accept the committee recommendations. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. I'll now ask Councillor Coombe if she would please present her finance and governance report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to present the Governance and Finance Committee report from Thursday the 14th of March, items 17 to 20, contained within pages 55 to 58.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Doyle. Thank you. Is there any comments from the committee chair?
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like everybody to note, I think it's item number 20, and I'll speak to that if I might. So this month's GFC, the CFO provided an update to the committee on the additional reporting that council will receive in light of the financial implications of the monsoon event. The presentation outlines 3 core pieces of information that council will receive from officers commencing on April 19 at the council meeting. Budget variance report and treasury report will continue to be provided, and that is in line with the requirements of local government regulations. In addition, a new report will be developed to forecast council's revenue and expenditure and will include those items directly related to the monsoon event. This report will capture highlight income grant revenue and recovery related spend. Further, a monthly register of procurement activity directly resulting from the monsoon event will also be provided. This additional reporting will ensure compliance with the local government requirements and support effective financial management and oversight and ongoing transparency.
Thank you. All right, any further comments? We can't run the council unless the books are up. Okay. With that, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Kirk. I'll now move on to Townsville Water and Waste Committee. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to present Townsville Water and Waste Committee report from Thursday the 14th of March this year. Items 22, 23 and 24 contained within pages 60 to 62 of the ordinary council agenda, and item 21 to be discussed separately.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, so we're voting on 22, 23, 24. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Doyle, thank you. Any discussion on those? And they are important. They are the construction of the hospital diversion sewer pressure main, which I think will help many of our residents to alleviate some of the problems we've seen in the last event. So, and our recycled water reuse scheme, the plant construction awarding of that contract. So these are very big projects for our city, and the plant construction for the water reuse scheme is part of our 3-point plan for water security. very important contracts. With that, then, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, item 21 relates to our statement of interest to perceived conflict, which is in our notes. Now, I would like to move that the CEO be delegated the responsibility of awarding this contract and reporting back to council. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Cook. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. That deals with the committee reports. I'd now like to move to business services and deal with 27, 28 and 30 and then move into closed session for item 29. So 27 is a request from the Singaporean government to attend the World City Summit. Councillors, I have deemed myself unavailable for this. However, if there is any councillors who wish to attend. So, we have one expression of interest. What I will do is I think we'll just leave it at the officer's recommendation, if I can. Yeah. And then we could adjust in the AG meetings. All right, can I have someone move the recommendation? Councillor Greenie, seconded Councillor Ryder. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 28 is the Performance Management Quarterly Report. Now, Matt, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Chair. Councillor, this is our Quarter 2 2018-19 performance report. It covers the period 1 October through to 31st of December. The report's as you've seen before, but I just would like to highlight three particular outcomes I think that are worthy of noting. The Charles Moroney Park early works commenced in Quarter 2 18-19. Ingham Road Webb Drive intersection upgrade was completed over that period also. And slightly different one there, Pet Microchipping Day was held early in October, and delighted to say we've got almost 500 pets now microchipped through those programs that we've been running, the free microchipping events. So look, just a very quick sample of the activity of Council and the contribution. So Mayor, it is for your consideration and the Council's consideration.
Thank you. Firstly, questions? Councillors, this is the third quarter.
Quarter 2.
Quarter 2.
Yeah.
I'm very keen to see the third quarter because I think in terms of operationally how we are continuing to operate in line with the event, that's the one that will be key for me. Alright? Alright, if there's no other comments?
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
Yes?
Just had one item that's identified in the report, it's identified as red. I think the officers are filling the report. That should be amber. The expected time frame for the establishment of the Transport Advisory Working Group is January, so it'd be call on the third quarter. So just wanted that rectified. And given that there was a decision prior and previously in this council meeting, it's probably complete now that the state Transport Advisory Group has been established.
All right, thank you. So that can be adjusted.
It will be adjusted, Madam Mayor, and I have confidence in our Quarter 3.
Every confidence as well. All right. So the recommendation is that we receive the corporate performance report for Quarter 2, being for the period 1st of October to the 31st of December 2018. Can I have someone move that? We accept that. Thank you, Councillor Coon. Seconded, Councillor Molokino. Any questions of the staff? If not, we will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against, carried unanimously. We will deal with the late agenda item, which is regarding sponsorship for TriFest. Item 3. Is that to be dealt with in confidential? Alright, so what we will do now is for item 29 and 30, we move to confidential. Can I have someone move? Thank you, Councillor Molteno, seconded Councillor Doyle. We will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Can I now ask those who are not involved in these two confidential reports, if they could please leave the chamber, and could I ask that all of our artwork. The recommendation is there. Can I have someone move? Thank you, Councillor Cook, seconded Councillor Greening. We will put that then to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The second item is item 30, and it relates to the Townsville Triathlon Festival as part of our grants and partnership application. Now, we are recognising the vital contribution made by this community organisation to our social, economic, community and cultural well-being. The Townsville Triathlon Festival organisers have identified the 2019 event as a significant year for growth, with the introduction of a longer program that includes an off-road element over the second weekend, and hence the expansion of this event from 11 to 22 events. The expansion to the program will support the recent partnership agreement between Townsville City Council, TEQ and the Triathlon Festival in a bid to host the 2021 Multi-Sport World Championships. So with that, the recommendation is there that we provide, is treated as confidential, and that Council approve the issuing of the Community Grants and Partnership Funding Agreement to Townsville Triathlon Festival Incorporated as outlined in this report. Can I have someone move the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Coombs, seconded Councillor Ryder, is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Jacob?
Yeah, just one, Lady Mayor. In the executive summary, it's got recent partnership agreement between the council.
This council.
Oh, sorry. No, it's still up on the board though.
Yeah. The executive summary.
That
should read Towns.
I'll continue if I can.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was just a typo, I think it may be. It's just got.
It should read Tourism Events Queensland.
Yeah, it's got Townsville City Council, Townsville Enterprise Queensland, and Townsville Enterprise Limited.
All right, so we have a mover and seconder, thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We now move to general business, and I believe Councillor Sauce. Sorry. Yes, thank you. So item 24, which we voted on, requires a slight change in wording in the officer's recommendation in order to ensure that we award this contract, not resolve. So can I have the same mover and seconder, which is Councillor Cook, I believe, and if I may. And Councillor Doyle, if we may just resolve to change this to that council award in accordance. If I can have the same mover and seconder. All right. To adjust item 24, the officers to adjust council's recommendation.
Thank you.
I'll put that then to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I'll now move to general business. Councillor Sawes.
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, I'd like to bring to this council meeting the concerns of the Atkinvale residents over the planned construction of the 5-storey youth foyer at 3133 Elizabeth Street, Atkinvale. After numerous meetings, contacts, discussions with residents, significant concerns have been identified with the construction of this youth home. No one I have spoken with is against the purpose of the building, which is to accommodate homeless or at-risk young people and to enable them to further education and seek employment. But what is being proposed does not closely resemble applications elsewhere. Should this go ahead, it will have an overpowering influence over nearby residents that do not take into consideration their quality of life. It is this point that I call on the state government, the local member and the minister to hear the voice of Atkinvale and reconsider where this project is to be built. The current petition has over 1,200 signatures, which must send a powerful message, and we plead, can we get a win-win for everybody? It is believed there are several other locations that have been provided to the local member for consideration that will deliver a higher quality of support for the youth that need to use this facility, place them closer to educational support and avail more open space for exercise and enjoyment. I ask all here to contact their local state member to get a better outcome and let Townsville residents know their opinion matters, that their voice will not only be heard but responded to. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Are there any other items for general business? If not, I will close today's meeting at 2:45 p.m. and thank you all for your attendance.